day in the garage, boys. What's up, guys? We are back with another episode of Factory Fresh. We last left off on the episode working on the GT F100 Unibody Mustang body swap, and as you can see, it's completely blown apart again. So last video we got the bumper mounted the chassis, we got all the panels fitted, we got all the epoxy primer and everything, started prepping for body work, and that's what we're getting now. So we got the high build on, we're sanding it. Ran into some few issues with having access into adjustments of the fenders and panels, final mounting the front clip. With a lot of advice from some of you guys, we flush mounted the bumper, so we'll go through on how to flush mount those bumpers. We got rid of those carriage bolts that we had initially mounted the bumper with, and we should be super close to getting color on this thing. So like, subscribe, follow along, let's get going. We had to blow the whole front clip apart before we could final mount some of this upper grill area and some other things with alignment, because let me show you. You guys can see the front fender here. On the old Ford, you've got this front panel, and this hole right here is how I adjust the front fender. There's a mount here, there's one up here. We built a custom one up in the front. There's also one down here. Well, I can't access this hole when my door's on. I have to go through this upper hinge and reach down in and get to it, because on a factory Ford you can actually get behind this bulkhead and access it with your hand. Well, if you can see here, clearly all of the Mustang modules, everything else is down, it is blocked, so there's no access hole. We cannot do that which is fine. I think I've got a good solution. So we've got to get an access hole in this bulkhead here so we can get to this fender adjustment, and I can actually put the doors, align the doors, and then we align the fenders to the doors. The way it was is I couldn't adjust the fenders with the doors on. I have to take a door off, hinge off, and then put the fenders on, and there's no way to get panel gaps like that really. So unfortunately, one step forward, two steps back, but here's the solution. So just got these little grommets, these little body grommets, like here for instance. You can see it kind of pops in. They have them all over the place, but just little access panels, little rubber, little doohickeys here, whatever they're called. So I'm gonna drill and cut a hole perfectly right here, if you guys can see it. That way I can get a wrench in here and access this adjustment, and we can install these front fenders with the doors on, panel gaps all fit. So we're kind of doing a late night session here. Gonna get these holes put in, and then get all the panels back on and fitted, so we can final weld in these front mounts for the fenders, and then we're gonna start high build primer. Alright guys, so we are starting the process of making these little access holes for that front fender mount. I'm trying to use my straight edge here to obviously create a straight edge, and measuring some hole saws to my little rubber grommet, the inside beveled edge. I like to use those hole punches to kind of mark the center of my drilled hole, especially with the hole saw, because then the bit doesn't kind of wander if you don't have that hole punch. So that's good to use. What I should have done is use the straight edge to mark the center of the holes. I was kind of doing it to mark the edge of the holes based on that body line. Ended up getting a little sideways, and I try to measure short. That way I can use my angle grinder or little die grinder to kind of widen it out if I need to, instead of cutting it too large. So it's kind of what we're doing. Working through that, I made it a little bit short, kind of remarking here to drop down the hole saw for the outside two circumferences. And then I just kind of clean up that center edge with my beveled die grinder, and turned out pretty good. Gives us a nice little access where I can keep these two hinges installed, which will allow me to build all the gaps and then install our rubber grommets. So could have been a little cleaner, but overall it serves its purpose and did what I wanted it to. All right, boys, so we got her in. Wasn't the most beautiful measuring we had there, but she's straight. Serves its purpose. It's gonna be a little hole, but I can get in and access this with a wrench and have my panel or have my door hinges on and still fit my front fenders, which is critical. So I'll order some more of these grommets here, but she fits in good, and we can keep moving on with this. So let's do the same thing on the other side, and then we'll get all these panels back on and hard mount this front clip area. All right, numero dos. She's nice and snug, fit perfectly. So again, driver's side, we can access this fender and make some adjustments. Nothing like scuffing up a bunch of chrome parts, so I can kind of do this later. I wanted to make sure I could pull these handles apart and everything and get to all the nooks and crannies so we can get this down, because these are all chrome parts. If you guys can see, when you paint chrome parts, you gotta be really careful. Make sure you're using epoxy primer. Make sure you scuff it up good, 80, 100 grit sandpaper. Get a good tooth on that metal. Otherwise, chrome is super hard. It's not gonna adhere to it. So epoxy primer and doing that, it works pretty good. So I kind of want to pull this stuff apart just to make sure I could get everything into pieces and lay it out and spray it. So now that works. I just did one side. We'll get back to the other major pieces here that we kind of need for the grill. So like these headlight buckets, the latch for the hood, just some other miscellaneous things we're going to keep kind of working on, and hopefully get everything in epoxy. And then, oh, I forgot to show you guys. So yesterday we did the fenders. We're going to continue some little body work, but we got a Raptor liner on the inside. So it's just kind of a textured liner, bed liner type material. I really like putting the Raptor liner on fenders just because doing that, like if you get rocks and stuff that'll come up from your tires and it's all metal and you don't have any of that bed liner type material or some kind of insulation on the inside of your fenders, all you're gonna hear is rocks, just constant rocks hitting your fenders. So we got the inner fenders done. We just need to continue on so we can get the fitment back on. Let's keep cracking. We'll get all these panels prepped and try to get her back together. All right, well, on to the front clip final mounting. So now that we finally got the little pockets in the cab so we can access these front fenders and actually adjust them, we got the gaps and everything pretty much how we want them, we can start to final mount these front fenders. So you can see the front tube structure here is kind of what these fenders are mounted off of, and then they're tied in here. Sounds like we have a plane coming over. All right, we're back. So like we were saying, the front fenders now, we have all the adjustment with the brackets in the hole. We can access them while the doors are attached and get the gaps. We need to do the last mounting point, which is here. Have everything kind of clipped and clamped in place. We're gonna drill these little brackets that extended up a little bit, weld those in. Same thing on the other side. We're gonna drill, weld that in. For the front fender mounting, you can see this upper grill portion here that is attached. We made two little tabs and just tacked them in to this 1-inch DOM bar here. So this has rigidity when we close the hood. It doesn't flex or move and everything. Got the grill pulled out, fixing some little dings and stuff with some more body filler. So let's get started on that, clamp that stuff up, drill it, get that hardware in there. And then also we got to put our mount back in this corner here, which we had to drill and lift up a little bit. And those are just right over here on the table. So I'll set you guys up, we'll drill, weld that stuff in. The front clip should be good. Get our little handy dandy hole punch set here so we can get them perfectly centered. Did it? Good job. Let's get a little bit bigger bit. We'll keep stepping up till we get to the hole size we want.
New York racing?
A what?
New York racing.
New York racing?
Yeah.
That's a state.
Grown-up one.
Oh, what kind of, you want a car or motorcycle or monster truck, or what are you thinking?
A normal race car.
Normal race car?
Yeah.
Okay, let me get these holes and then we'll turn it on. My 5-year-old just learned how to do burnouts. It's pretty impressive. What are you doing, bud? You doing a burnout? Hold on. You doing a burnout? You got your helmet on and everything?
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's pretty sweet. You're gonna burn them tires off. I don't know where you learned to do burnouts. Couldn't have been his dad. Alright, well, we got our holes drilled. I'm just going to tack this plate in to keep the position of these plates. And we'll drill these holes out all the way so we can get some bolts in there. Sound good, bud?
Yeah.
Yeah. What are you doing? Don't lose any of that stuff.
I know. I'm not using this.
Alright boys, me and Bo doing a little garage cleaning. We got the old girl pulled out. We got some body panels on her. Woo, she looks good. Figured I'd wash her down with all this bodywork stuff here. We still need to get the bumper on, but she's cleaned up a little bit. Gotta admit, she looks good. Real good. Couple little finishing touches. I gotta say thanks to a couple of you viewers commented on the bumper on these carriage bolts and how to kind of flush mount them on the bumper for that nice kind of little details, finishing touches, which I completely agree with. I think it'll look really cool. So let me show you what I'm talking about if you guys don't know. So we've got the bumper here and we've got our carriage bolts, which are these little squared off bolts that fit in the holes, but it leaves this little cap here, which really isn't a big deal. Likely we're painting this whole bumper black with all the other black accented, like the wheels, side mirrors, handles, things like that, and the bumper will be black as well. I don't think it'll be obvious, but I think next level would definitely be if we weld these bolts in the backside here and cut off and flush mount this, and then smooth all this, and we'll fill it and then paint it so this whole bumper is nice and smooth. I think that'll be a cool little touch, not too much extra work. So shout out to the guys. I had a couple guys kind of mention that to me, so thanks. I think that's a great idea. Let's get it set up here on the welding table, and I'll kind of show you guys what we're gonna do. We can either cut the ends off these and then weld them in. I think I'm just gonna get them in nice and tight where I can hold them from the backside in the orientation I want. We'll cover this thread with like aluminum foil or something to protect these threads. Tack this in, clean up the bumper real good, tack all this stuff in, and then finish weld everything in, and then just grind off the backside. A little more work, but I think it'll help me keep the orientation. Hold on, dude. You playing the drums over there? It'll help me keep the orientation of this bolt exactly where I want it. So let's get after it. Alright, so we're kind of just going to start prepping the surface of this bumper. As with everything, especially welding and bodywork stuff, a lot of it's the prep. So we're prepping all this metal surface, getting off the coating that comes from these factory reproduction parts, that black coating. grinding down the bolts a little bit, make sure we get bare metal and get that galvanized part off of it. And I was using acetone, so the big thing with welding is have a clean surface. Welding the nuts or the bolts to the bumper, a clean surface is going to leave you nice tacks and not a bunch of residue, so you get the product you'd like. We've got our carriage bolts recessed in, everything's cleaned up. Got some aluminum foil on the threads to kind of protect those. What I'm going to do is, with my gloved hand, backside, get the orientation how I want, push the bolt up flush, make sure it's straight, and then we will tack it in and then finish weld the whole thing. Flip it over, grind it down, see if we need to add any bodywork to completely smooth it. And we will have a flush mount bumper. I need some lights. We will have a flush mount bumper. They're the best bumpers in the world. Alright, let's get to it. Let's get our ground hooked up. Whoops. Usually working off a welding table, I can just connect to the ground, the metal touches that, but I want this little blanket down here for some cushioning. So we'll ground off our bumper. Hey Bo, I'm going to weld over here, don't look, okay?
I'm welding too.
You're welding too? Nice.
I'm building.
Okay, see if we can lift this up so I can make sure the bolt is nice and tight.
My bumper.
Second thought, another option is with the aluminum foil, it'll kind of pop through it, but it'll resist little welding chunks to get stuck, just stick to the thread, not really burn in. If you put some tip dip on the threads, it'll help too. So you welders out there and on, just get some tip dip, and I'll rub the threads on that, and it'll kind of resist if a little bead or ember from the weld splatter hits, it won't stick. That's a good option too.
Put some of that on my truck.
You want some tip dip on your truck? We can do that. Alright, well the very last bolt we're welding in, just like I said, I don't know if you guys can see, I got a little bit of splatter right there. So worst case, if that does happen, get a file. We're gonna file down the thread so we can get our nut on. No big deal. Well, we ground the living hell out of these carriage bolts, so got them all smoothed up now. Did my best to try to kill the grinder, but she survived. I may go in here and just tack in these little gaps. I mean, it's plenty strong on the back side here, these bolts, but I'd rather have metal in here than some type of filler. So even though there's just these little cracks, so we'll probably go in and just touch these up one last time with the welder, grind it down smooth, and then we'll clean the bumper up real good. And anything left that we have imperfections, we'll put a nice skim coat of filler on there, and we'll have our flush mount bumper. And we should probably fit it to make sure it fits. Didn't get any warpage from that heat, so let's do it. Alright, well we're working on a little project here where I had to cut a recession in this door that you can see where it impacted the rocker. Just made some cardboard templates, transferred those to metal, cut the metal on the bandsaw, grinded it down in the belt sander, kind of finalized it, finished it in, tacked it in. We're going to use some fiberglass filler to kind of smooth everything out. The door actually impacted the rocker panel a little bit on the modern Mustang when we grafted that new modern or 1962 truck on the modern Mustang. So we just finalizing the bodywork so we can get epoxy on it and clean everything up before we spray it so the door shuts properly. So we are going to spray some high build primer surfacer over the epoxy, put on the direct metal stuff. Haven't shot this stuff yet with the gun, so I'm gonna kind of do some test panels on just the doors, tailgates. I always recommend for newbie painters, which I am one, look at your tech data sheet. And it kind of gives you suggestions on how this is mixed and how it's sprayed and what the pot life is and all that kind of stuff. This should kind of help us really start to finalize the bodywork on the old F100 2016 Mustang body swap. So let's mix this stuff up. I'll kind of show you guys how I do this. I haven't went through it yet, but we've done a bunch of epoxy, and this is our first coat of high build. So we'll do 2 to 3 coats of medium wet, and then give it 15 minutes to flash. It recommends 1.4 to 1.8 tip. We have a 1.7 tip in our Eastwood gun, so I'll go over cleaning this when we're done too real quick. Really, it should be pretty easy. I've got new filters. Want to mix this thing up real good because it's got a lot of solids in it, obviously, because it's kind of a high build made to sand down. So game plan is, once we get all this on, we've been sanding with 120 grits as fine as we've gotten. We'll start to get to, you know, in the 2, 3, 400s even, and really finalize this bodywork. So let's get this stuff mixed up. It's a 4 to 1 to 1, so 4 parts of the primer filler, 1 part of a reducer, and then 1 part of the activator. We'll do that and stay about 6 to 10 inches away from the panel, 50% overlap, and see how she looks. All right, I'm gonna quit talking. When you mix up your paints too, make sure you're wearing your mask for solvents. You don't wanna kill them brain cells. Most of us don't have many to spare. So I'm gonna quit talking, get this mixed up, correct ratio, and I'll see if I can turn the camera over and show you guys the spray too. It's good to see at least someone in the family likes doing body work. So we got Bo out here. What's up, Ripper? Hey Bo, what are you sanding? Oh, nice. Good work. Keep it up. You gotta keep it in the family, boys. Got the high build primer put on the truck. So let's take a look. We had a little bit of a hiccup. Here, I started sanding it a little bit. You can see down here, up here, obviously I started sanding with 600 grit. We've got some texture. I'm not sure if you guys can see this. My last coat, I put 3 coats of the high build, and my last coat, my gun was kind of doing something kind of silly, and seemed like it was real low pressure, and it was kind of sputtering and spitting the high build out. So I was trying to figure out what the heck was going on. Did I have a filter clog? I was over here, I knew it wasn't right. I pulled my filter apart thinking my little blue filter, I pulled it off. The filter broke off in my fitting here. I was messing with all my gun settings. Let me go show you what this gun, what I'm looking at. So I had this filter on here, kind of last resort to get moisture and any contaminants out. I'll attach them right to the gun, Harbor Freight special, and I'll attach it just right down here. So I was wondering, is my filter clogged? I'm looking at my pressure, which I'm setting on my regulator here on the gun. That looks correct. I can't figure out what's going on. We have our air control up here on trigger pull. Basically, you're always going to keep that wide open. And then you have your fluid control up here. That was set correctly. I could not figure out what the heck was going on. I could tell by the gun spray it was kind of splattering and not discharging the high build primer like I wanted. So couldn't figure it out. Come to find out, this airflow control down here, which I never mess with, you never really calibrate, you just open it up all the way. So you open this up all the way, the gun is flowing 100%. This, through putting my top canisters on and off and tightening and loosening this and cleaning the gun over those 3 coats, I was slowly closing this valve. Didn't realize it till the end. I think that was the problem. I broke the filter that comes on down here, or goes on down here, before I could validate that that was the problem. I slowly closed this, which is difficult to troubleshoot because I was pulling the trigger and still showing my pressure that I wanted here, but I could tell I wasn't getting the pressure out of the gun. Completely wasn't paying attention to this valve down here, and my air inlet was slowly closed. Lessons learned. I mean, that stuff happens. The fact that it happened during the high build portion of putting this on, not a big deal because we got to sand it down anyway. What came of it was basically this last coat I put on, whether you guys can see it or not, has a little bit of a texture. So I'll sand this down smooth, and basically I'm going to take away this last third coat, this texture, to smooth it all out. We're kind of working on that. I'm fixing some little bitty low spot here with just a block and 600 grit. And you can kind of see, I'll just run nice across and you'll see these are low spot. There's a few just little tiny imperfections. The point of putting this high build on right now is, before it was just this epoxy. We have the 2 fenders and the top side of the hood to do yet, and the grill. The reason I want the high build is I can sand this down and get to the epoxy primer, I'm good. I was getting sick of sanding epoxy primer down in metal, then I'd have to reapply epoxy. This is where we want to be. I'm sanding the high build, which is what it's intended for. I'll find these high or low spots, kind of fill them in with really thin filler. We'll smooth it out, and we're going to work to 600 to 800 grit for the base coat. So we want to have this whole truck smoothed out, 600 grit blocks, and then down to 800. We may wet sand it, because once you get to this really fine grit, I mean, it takes very little effort to completely clog up your sandpaper. So it becomes a huge pain in the butt. We're going to go around, sand these little low spots we found, a couple little dimples here and there. We'll fill those up, and then we're going to go through the whole truck, get it to 600 to 800, and kind of smooth this thing out so it's 100%. And we should be close to base coat at that point. We have officially hit a first time ever. I am so sick of sanding. Well, I'm gonna go edit a video. We gotta get this out. Made good progress. We've got the flush mount bumper. She's looking good. All the gaps are finalized. We've got stuff marked on our doors so we can get everything affixed. The front clip is all finalized. And we've got this high build primer. Initially I was thinking, hey, you know, we sprayed that 3rd coat on, and the gun was a little jacked up, the settings, lessons learned, and I was thinking, oh, if you guys can see this texture on here, I'm trying to be optimistic and thinking, oh, that'll be a good thing, because it's like a guide coat, right? We put a little guide coat of some kind of powder, spray, whatever, and you can sand that down so you don't sand too deep and you kind of know how deep you go. Well, it's 10 times the work of the guide coat, so we are definitely not doing this quick. This is going to take probably another week of getting all of the bodywork done, but you can see here it's nice and smooth, which is what we want. And then you can see over here it is textured. So every single square inch we are sanding and taking a lot of time on. It's going to be really smooth and look good, but wow, this is a lot of work. So I'm going to get this thing all sanded, ready to go. We're going to paint and color or 2-stage obviously. We're gonna lay paint down and then clear coat the interior. This didn't have that last coat that was really nasty and textured, so I pretty much can sand this down to 600-800 grit and get it ready for paint. So I think we're going to do that. We do have to pull all the sheeting. Here's lessons learned. If you guys ever paint this masking, this is just the normal whatever masking, you know, with the tape that you can get on Amazon. You can see how this paint flakes off. That stuff will get all over everything if we start spraying. So we're going to have to pull all this stuff because it just crumbles off and turns into a nasty mess. This stuff is the 3M nice, you know, paint to this side, and it actually, the spray paint adheres to this, so I can't crackle this off, which is really good stuff. So try to put this stuff on whenever possible. This stuff is nice because it has tape around the perimeter, and you can kind of tape it and then roll it out, but we do have to replace it. Every time you paint, you got to pull this stuff up or you're going to get this flakes and everything. So on that note, she's looking good. Can't deny that. Not as good in the white, but once we get that deep impact blue on it, it is going to look good. So with that, as always, thanks everybody. Like, subscribe, comment, and God bless and long live hot rodding.